Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're here with us on a specific session called the ABCs for Maximizing Your Data Potential. And I'd like to thank everyone who's here. I hope people are coming in and that you are all ready. Our distinguished panelists are all definitely ready. And, I'm hoping for a fantastic and engaging sessions with all of you, with the panelists and yourself. So perhaps before I start, just to set a stage, you'll probably be wondering what's ABC, maximizing your potential, data potential. You're probably already looking at data, and you probably know that today data is also known as the new oxygen for the livelihood of businesses, right? From oil, now it has become oxygen. And I would take that that's becoming even more critical in terms of day-to-day lives, as well as what we do in terms of business, the valuable insights that can come from here. And as you know as well, the data exists in many forms and they are interrelated, right? We are seeing an explosion of data around the world, multitude of data coming from different countries, countries like US and China, and now they've gone on into zettabytes, right? Which is super, super huge. And I think this trend will grow even bigger as we see in the current situation where more organizations are relying on internet as well as digital businesses. And obviously that will contribute to much the data explosion that's happening. And of course, this is also helped by the different types of devices out there in terms of the smartphone penetration. I mentioned internet, and not to mention social media penetration as well. The data is opportunity, and therefore the question today is actually how do we maximize the potential of the data that is captured here. And there's more information that I can see, but I think more importantly, data, it's actually, or maximizing data, basically it's a journey. It is not a one-off thing. It's basically an entire journey that's looked at, and therefore there are obviously many components, a few components that you probably know as well, which are such as infrastructure, talent, data governance, and among others. So today we're going to have our session, discussions basically around this topic that I just spoke about. And we have, let me just give you a quick introduction of our three panelists, our esteemed panelists that we have here today. We're honored to have them, and they'll be sharing their experience as well as learning in driving their respective organization as well as their clients on data-driven journey. So first of all, I'm pleased to introduce TS Dr. Mohamed, SVP of IT and Education and Training from Serba Dinamik Group. He's currently championing the development of an award-winning digital one-stop center solution called the Smart Maintenance Global Innovation Hub, D Virtual Park, which is in Kota Samarahan and Bangi, as well as Pertama HSC Virtual Demo Room, which is in Balikpapan. With combined industrial and academic experience of over 15 years, he is well-versed in the field of XR technology, AI, big data analytics, digital transformation, and more, as he was one of the key task force members in Malaysia's TVET IR 4.0 task force for educational institutes in Malaysia. Let us also welcome our second panelist, which is Madelaine Chew, the rose among the thorns, I would say, for today's session, the Managing Director of Mezzanine Solutions. Madelaine has over 20 years of working experience in the financial sector, telco, government, consulting environment, and eventually as an entrepreneur. So that's really interesting. We've got an entrepreneur with us today, and I'm sure there will be an exciting view that we can get from her. She hails from quality assurance by background and has since diversified into system integration, big data, mobile solution, as well as DevOps consulting as a service. She has steered the organization to venture into system integration and consulting, big data as service, DevOps consulting, as well as mobile payment solutions. Our third panelist, last but not least, Dr. Shin Liang, Director, Visa Consulting and Analytics from Visa International. He holds a PhD degree in physics from the University of Cambridge. At Visa, he leads a data science team to engage with the bank's merchants to help them drive their business profitability. By using machine learning and AI techniques, he helped to drive customer engagement through lookalike models, identify high potential customers for acquisition, and identify customers who are at risk of attrition in order for clients to take preventive measures. He applied data science to help fraud detection as well. risk assessment, as well as helping our clients to drive their business profitability through predictive analytics. So there we have our esteemed panelists, and I think let me just start off the discussion without further ado. I think we understand where data it's from. We understand many different aspects of data. You're probably here as listening from your own perspective as well, in terms of your experience with data or your future experience with data. So before we start, perhaps we could sort of just get a bit of a warming up session as well with our panelists. So my first question is related to data, but very much related to yourselves, panelists. My first question basically will be like, what are your roles? I've explained about you just now. So, but the point here is actually in terms of what are your roles in your organization? How do you drive the functions that you do? Perhaps I could invite Dr. Shin first to provide your view, Doctor.
Sure. Thanks, Muhu. I think as per your introduction earlier, you sum it up quite succinctly that the kind of work that I do at Visa, I basically build and develop a lot of data-driven solutions for our clients. But to take a step back and look at my overall roles and responsibility, is the fact that the financial sector in the last couple of years, which are basically our clients, right? Banks, issuers, and merchants. So the financial sectors, especially in the last couple of years, have been gearing up towards using data science, AI, and machine learning methods to help them grow their profitability. And so my role is really as a consultant. My role is to help them in cases where they haven't developed the capabilities, my role would be to help them co-develop these kind of capabilities. In the event that sometimes they might want to have some very specialized, unique solutions, it is my role to help them develop those solutions. But more often than not, because I'm based in Malaysia, a lot of my time is actually spent on helping them to see the value in data science. So it's and I would put it in a way that a lot of my job is actually about change transformation. Because how marketing is done, how a lot of the areas of the business operations are done, they are not typical geared or designed for using data science and machine learning. They have been basically based on experience over the last 20 years, which is, for lack of a better word, it's Excel based, right? Nothing against Excel based, but I think if you're looking about the fact that we're here means we're looking towards in the next 10 or 20 years where we see data as the new oil. So we have to move beyond Excel based. We have to move beyond where we see we make decisions based on merely averages and maximum and minimum. So these are the typical business decisions that people make, right? What is the average spend last month, and just make a decision based on that. We have to be more personalized. We have to be utilize the fact that a lot of the data that the financial sector is collecting is sitting there and not being used. So to summarize all, I'm basically a consultant to help change transformation, to help them see the value of data science.
Thank you, Dr. Shin. I do have some questions on that point you made, but perhaps let's do some continue with the introduction. Now I'll get back to you on the transformation journey. Yeah? So perhaps then we can go to Ms. Madelaine. Madelaine, the same question as well. How do you see your role? What's your role in your organization?
So thank you, Muhundhan, for the introduction. So I suppose as an entrepreneur, I think you started off presenting me very well, very easily explained. As an entrepreneur, I'm all out, expanding a business, all right, helping my customers. We are also obviously in the consulting line. One of the things I want to mention is that one of the things we believe very strongly as a consultant is that we want to be able to help our customers to bring the value of their data, to surface out the value of the data. right? By exercising the entire engineering processes, by going through the entire process to be able to surface out the and mine those data, from wherever they may be across the entire organization, and help them to correlate the value and share this out to bring it out to the surface. But even after bringing it out to the surface, it also means that a lot of my customers, they'll sometimes they might also be at they might also get clueless, as in like, then what do I do with it? I know there is this set that you managed to find out, then what do I do next? That kind of thing. So we come in a lot from the angle of not just undertaking the professional services, but we also help our customers to find a value and build the entire ecosystem. So I think I will be sharing a lot more into some of the platform that we have developed in the past on how we can help our customers to do data exchange, to actually use the exchange ecosystem to be able to further monetize the value of their data from that point onwards. So back to your question, Muhun, my role is a lot to do with cultivating, a lot to do with surfacing and helping our customers to realize the value, the potential of their data, and eventually, obviously, upsell it internally and externally at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madelaine. Interesting view. And then, as we know, entrepreneurs are basically big risk takers. And as entrepreneurs, we also always look into things differently. And I like the term you use in terms of surfacing this information. So there are loads of data out there. How do you surface and create value, which is always the biggest challenge. So now we are to Dr. Ackiel. So please share with us, what is your role in your organization? You're on mute, Doctor.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Mohan, for your very kind words and kind introduction. So, I am the Senior VP for IT and also the Education Business Units in Serba Dinamik Group Berhad. I oversee new business ventures locally and globally. We operate in 27 countries over 5 regions. I manage development of new products, new geographical areas, and direct the operation of some of our ventures and products, as well as drive innovations within the company in the fields of tech as well as education. So one of the major overseas ventures that right now is under my purview would be the Block 7 Innovation Hub that we are developing in Abu Dhabi. It's very much related to innovation and digitalization. And then we are also building 24 megawatt data center in Abu Dhabi, which would be further scaled up to 72 megawatts over 3 phases. And from the perspective of education, of course, it is something very close to our heart, because as we went through our own digital transformation, we found that finding the right talent locally is a challenge. So somehow to go through our transformation, we had to source the global talent from various countries that we are positioned in. So very recently, we acquired Unimai, Malaysia University of Science and Engineering in Cyberjaya, which is very, very much focused in IT-related courses. Those days, I would say it would be still called IT. Now they don't call it IT or ICT anymore. So now the new buzzword for IT is tech. So this university is focusing on tech-related courses. For example, we have a diploma in cybersecurity. We are having a lot of courses on AI, in X reality. Yeah? X reality means like it's a combination of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and recently some school of thought are saying that there is something more which they call extended reality, and etc. So in Unimai, I would be I am the deputy chairman for the board of governors. So so one of the main reasons why we acquired Unimai is so that we can complete our talent pool ecosystem locally to provide some cutting edge flavor to the local tech talent market. So more or less, that would be a brief introduction of me.
Thank you, Dr. Ackiel. Thank you. So I see the broad experiences that comes together with all the panelists having to serve Dr. Shin, an MNC, looking at the journey, entire journey for your clients. Madelaine coming from an entrepreneurial perspective, looking at it from also bringing out the ROIs behind data. And Dr. Ackiel, you are basically you are the execution guy, executing this from a user perspective as well as looking at it from an educational perspective. So there's a talent element as well, which is fantastic. So even before getting into the technical part of it, I'm sure there's a lot of our audiences would love to work on all the different jargons out there. But I'm also cautious of the business people out there as well, in terms of the 90% of people out there who's trying to figure out how important is data to them, right? So my first question is in terms of, as we today have a multitude of data coming from multitude of channels, the challenge has always been in terms of collecting those data, one. Second is that when you're able to collect this data, as what Dr. Shin said, maybe even through Excel, which is not probably the best way to do it now, but it opens up, in many other ways, it opens up to many opportunities out there, and where data is becoming a valuable asset. So my question to you, basically now, is that when you have this data, right, how do you maximize on the data? Are you doing anything, with this data, or in terms of the ROI perspective? And maybe you can help us to describe a bit what are the things that you can actually sort of get from this data, and how we can benefit an organization. Perhaps I could invite Madelaine first to share.
All right. So thank you so much. So I suppose over the years of us involved in analytics related project or engagement with our customers, we have always asked our customers one fundamental question: what are you trying to achieve here? There's always this fundamental question: is what are you trying to achieve? What are the business use case that you're trying to strive within your organization? Sometimes it could be revenue driven. Sometimes it could be customer service oriented. Sometimes it could be marketing outreach, because they want to outreach to a certain group of customers so that they can perhaps eventually using the data to promote and build additional opportunities for themselves, that kind of thing. So I think one of the first fundamental questions that we always want to strive to work with our customers very, very closely is to understand what are the business use case that they're trying to achieve, and what they strive to achieve from there. And then we work towards, once we understand their use cases, we then work towards understanding whether they actually possess the right kind of data to be able to achieve the objective that they wanted. Because you probably want to achieve to the world, and you want to reach out to the world, but you probably do not have certain set of data, and that's where it becomes a constraint that we always come across with a lot of our customers. So that is one of the first steps, I think, that we want to strive to understand from our customers. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. So what you're saying, basically, it encompasses quite a lot of things, right, in terms of data, in terms of the benefit. But sometimes the challenge is that customers may not know what they want. And I take your point, Madelaine, and I would like to just also perhaps ask the other two gentlemen, any one of you would like to add on in terms of, from a business standpoint, I think, how do you maximize this data that you are now able to collect?
Yeah, I actually have something to add on to Madelaine's very good point. So Madeleine mentioned that she would always approach from like what the customers want, and then next step would be to then look at what the data can actually do for them. And I think that's a very good good methodology to approach the problem. But I think I hear you say, Muhu, as well, that sometimes, especially in Malaysia, the customers do not know what they don't know. And sometimes it's the other way around, where we look at the data first and we will try to propose, like, look at this data, perhaps you can do something like that. I don't know if that's something that you're looking at as well. So this kind of process sometimes can go both ways. And the reason why I say this is that, I just came back from the UK about a year ago, a year plus. And what I realized that is in Malaysia, the case of data science is that we're doing catching up. What that means is that the really big companies with huge revenues, a lot of them, if they want to go into data science, they probably already have gone into data science. But to really transform our whole country or society to be a data science-centric society, it really has to go all the way down, trickle all the way down to the SMEs, to the small companies. And that's where the problem comes in, right? Which is the ROI. So they obviously, we can run this kind of data solutions for them, but is it easier for them to just hire another person? Is it, for example, if we do an automated robotic call RPAs, is it easier? Is it, because data scientists, I know a lot of news out there saying like data scientists are paid really well, it's a great career. A lot of young people, millennials are now, I hear a lot of my nephews and nieces and talking about how they want to be a data scientist. You know, there's lots of hype about data scientist is the next most lucrative job out there. But the problem is that if it's a nice lucrative job that you're getting, good pay, then the question comes back again that what is the company getting out from this, right? The ROI is very important. And to be fair, in many situations, the ROI actually comes in from, not so much from that it will, there are certain cases, I'm not saying none, right? There are certain cases where there's quantum leap of revenues. But in a lot of cases, it's about the stretching the margin, right? So for example, before I came back to Malaysia, when I was in the UK, I was in the IR 4.0 as well. I was actually in the oil and gas manufacturing industry. And where we see the most relevant use cases of data science or machine learning methods is where their margins are being squeezed, right? In the oil and gas industry, especially in the last few years where the oil price tanked, basically, they said our margins are so squeezed, we want to minimize our costs and maximize whatever revenue we can have. And that's when it is most relevant. Now, in the situations where you have infinite amount of money, no one has infinite money, but what I mean is that you have more than enough money to spend. In good times, sometimes the opportunity or the value of data science is not so apparent. I think there still is, but sometimes it's still not apparent, right? A case in point is like, let's say we talk about using machine learning to help you do hyper-personalization, right, of marketing strategies. In good times, you would say like, I don't care if I can personalize an offer for you, right? This is my offer. I'm going to tell every Malaysian that I am running this offer. You like it, you take it. You don't like it, it's okay. It's only a few cents of SMS. That's fine. Or just a few, even zero cost of email. But at that times where cost makes a lot of sense, that is when you realize that, look, I can't send a message to everyone. I can't give an offer that caters to everyone. I have to be very specific. I have to personalize it. And that's where the value of the data, I would think, comes out most strongly. And I just want to top off this conversation here by I think giving a very important context is that we always say data science, but data science actually stretches a long way, right? From data engineering, building the data lake, all the way to the end point of showing the clients what the true value of data is. Now, I might be wrong, and I'm glad that I'm more than happy if any of the panels would like to prove me wrong. But in my personal opinion, the bottleneck now is not so much about collecting data and massaging the data into the huge, nice data lakes, although I think that is very, very important. The bigger problem right now is that once we get a lot more data, the bottleneck is that what do we do with the data, and can we make them see the value of the data? And so in that sense, a lot of times the the data science work that we do is actually creating dashboards, step by step, creating dashboards, making the C-level people look at the data first. Because a lot of C-level people, they don't even look at data, right? First step, make them look at the data. Second step, make them understand data is important. Then maybe the final step is that now you know data is important, machine learning AI is going to come in to help you make business decisions. So these are the last mile thing that I think for Malaysia particularly, I think is very important.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying, I picked up obviously there are many good points there. I think in terms of cost, it's always been a major factor, and cost also broadens up in terms of what is needed, as well as you spoke about the bottleneck as well. So what is in my thought is now, is data analytics for everyone? Is it just for big organization? Perhaps I would like to pose that question to Dr. Ackiel. What's your take on this, Doctor?
Well, I mean, if you're asking whether it's data analytics for everyone, definitely it is, because every one of us is using Facebook. So whatever we get to see in the Facebook is a result of our own self being analyzed by Google and Facebook. So it is for everyone. You see, I think Madelaine and Dr. Shin has explained their points very well. In fact, so well that I think more or less it's like earning a free lunch for me or free ride for me. But the only thing there that we need to add on is, it is definitely for everyone. It's not only for big organizations or small organizations. Data is something that can be benefited by everyone. But it's just a matter of how can we benefit from this data. Sometimes it's not purely ROI. It's not purely about P&L. It's about how from that data we can extend our services into something else. How we can, make the customer journey or the customer experience more meaningful. Yeah? And then again, to achieve this, firstly, as Dr. Shin was saying, okay, you have an abundance amount of data, but you need to clean it. Not everything is, not everything can be turned into meaningful information. Rubbish in, rubbish out. Number two, there is also a lot of untapped data. Now, just to give an example of something that everyone would be able to understand. When you're talking about a car, probably we are just looking at the speed, at the temperature. But if you go deep down, there are so many sensors in the car that acts in order for that speed or the temperature or whatever, etc. of that car to be able to perform in such a manner. So if you go into a little bit deeper and tap into these, deeper parameters, then there would be a lot much more sense that you can make out of that data. So yeah, that would be my view on this.
Right. Thank you. So, bringing out data and making data meaningful, I think it's obviously that itself is an ROI. And as mentioned by all of you as well, in terms of who benefits from this, perhaps it starts from the top. Without visibility at the management level or the CEO or the MD, probably then this data would not be able to be appreciated fully. Therefore, then all the work was being done by the data engineers, data scientists. And I remember, I think even back then when I was working with a health informatics company, I think, and we were one of our clients were actually the government of Malaysia, Ministry of Health. I think the primary key issue that we had was actually how do you visualize all this stuff that's coming out, all these patients' data and all this different kind of data we were capturing, and how do you put them into a meaningful way so that decisions can be made quickly. So that makes a lot of sense as well. But even before we start looking into collecting data, I think one of the key things that probably is required, or the discussion I would like to take, to move on from now, it's actually in terms of infrastructure that's required. Infrastructure is not just the hardware, the software. I think a lot of people will be wondering, of course, talent, we'll cover that as well. Aside from talent, what are the setup that's required, right? Regardless of an organization, the size of it. How do you start when it comes to preparing this sort of environment. So I would like to pose this question to any one of the panelists to give your views on this. Where do you start, basically?
Okay, let me just give...
Can I start off first,
sure.
maybe?
Go ahead.
Okay, ladies first.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Madelaine.
Well, in my that I would ask all my clients, of course, is to understand which industry they come from. Okay. What has happened to us in the past is that we have come across many different type of customers coming from different background where they are required to be in compliance to certain ruling. Certain, for example, whether the data is allowed to be residing within in country, or they have specific compliance related requirements where they can't move their data or sensitive data because of certain PDPA related requirement. So a lot of this has got a very huge determinant factor on where the infra should be. That's my first point on where the infra should be, before we even decide what that infra is going to be, right? So I guess first question is to understand from a customer standpoint is that do they have specific compliance related requirement that they need to adhere to? Case in point are things like PDPA related compliance. If you're from a financial services industry, you would naturally be required to comply with the likes of RMIT, risk management in IT framework, and all this compliance has got a very big determinant factor on the type of infrastructure that can be used to host the data specific requirements. So having answered that particular first point, then we start talking about the different type of infrastructure out there. So I suppose at a very general point, I mean, just to start off the conversation, and I will pass on to the gentleman for the remaining things. Like the infrastructure can come in from many angles. It can come in from the cloud. It can be either a public cloud or a private cloud, or even specifically on-premise being hosted by the respective customers. So there are also obviously many different combinations. Rojak combinations are obviously of infrastructure that can be hosted in many different circumstances. Over to you, Dr. Ackiel.
Right. Thank you, Madelaine. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, very often one of the primary questions by the client when talking about infra is where it would be hosted. Yeah, and you have addressed that question very well. And going by the current scenarios, I think one of the other key, I would say, important factors when we are considering the infrastructure capabilities is scalability. Yeah, the infra should be designed in such a manner that it is able to accommodate, I would say, increasing computing powers, because by typical rate, when you're just talking about just storage, basic just storage, if you're talking about rackings, it would be something along 7 to 9 or 7 to 12 kilowatts per rack. But when you go into more intense computing, like when you involve artificial intelligence or machine learning, then you might require up to 40 kilowatts per rack. So if you have those things in the pipeline, and then you should always look at a scalable infra. And another important factor would be the ability of the infra to be able to perform parallel processing. And then another important factor would be to have very, very low latency resources. And finally, the infra should be able to accommodate data optimization. Yeah. So next, I would leave to my other panelists if he would like to add some more.
Yes, Dr. Shin, perhaps. So I think we've covered quite a bit in terms of the infrastructure and then perhaps some capability. Would there be any other thing that for a first-time organization, or even an organization that's already started their data journey, but to be wary of?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think the previous two panelists have already covered quite a number of ground. So let me try to answer your question, Muhu. So you're absolutely right that apart from the kind of sectors or the kind of business that you're engaged with, it's also very important to know at which stage of your business is, or at which stage of the what we call the analytics maturity model, right? How mature you are in terms of analytics. And I think that's a very important factor to consider as well. So to answer your question, for those companies who are really new into data science and is exploring whether to go into data science, what I think would always be important is actually pretty much my role who comes in, right? Like instead of going a full-fledged hiring all the people that you need and setting up all the infrastructure that you need. You could also always look out for consultants like us who can use some third-party data or even some data that we already have. For example, Visa, we have some of our data where we under the rules of PDPA, where we can share with you, try to generate some insights and see if this is useful for you before you decide whether you want to invest in it, right? I think that's the very important step. So first, just have a feel like how much value do you think data science is to your company. And then the next thing is obviously it also very much depends on your culture. And if your company is a really big company, that means there's lots of inertia. So it can be that the CEO says that, all right, I want everything to be done using data science and machine learning, but it has to trickle down, right? So at the very first step, is a lot of strategy and top-down kind of change management things that you have to do first. Now, when it comes to, I think that once you've done all that, then your question about how much you want to invest in infrastructure and how far you want to go with infrastructure, that question then becomes much clearer. But whatever that decision is going to be, I think what Ackiel mentioned is very important. It has to be scalable, right? Because things are changing so fast in the world of data science. You do not know what was called big data 2 years ago. Now we look back, we think, nah, that's not really big. All right. So we don't know how big data is going to be. How big is this big going to be in the next 2 years to 4 years? So scalability, I think, is very important.
Thank you, Dr. Shin. And I just like to quickly also pick up some of the comments given by the viewers. Maybe we can also do that. I know we have a Q&A session later. I think this is very relevant to what we spoke about. So Mr. Titi Tan has asked how to manage clients' idea on the building AI system that mimic human complex capability, while AI algorithms are usually or whether they usually solve the problem one by one. I think this is again going back to the customer expectation. Madelaine, you spoke a bit about that as well in terms of how do you surface the right data points, and the right perception to be built. Anyone would like to tackle this question?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about artificial intelligence, sometimes the expectations are a little bit far-fetched. So I think sometimes we need to also explain that there are limitations of what an AI can do. Although machine learning and deep learning can be taught to go beyond, but then again, we have to teach and train the algorithms that we create. So I think these fundamental things has to be explained to clients, and we also need to explain globally where we are in terms of achieving things. Because sometimes you have a lot of videos and demonstrations which actually does not portray the real scenario. So there's a lot of hype to the extent of what the AI can do, and then they simply call up a few vendors or company and say, look, this is my data, I want to achieve this. So here I think probably the hype got us a little bit too excited, and we think that, okay, just leave everything and then the system will do the rest. And can you imagine when you're sitting in the plane, the pilot starts to say that, okay, the plane is fully AI and I'm working from home.
Obviously, and I think, thanks to all the movies as well, which is
right.
mine, right? Minority Report always comes up with whoever I speak with.
My favorite Minority Report.
So we can't run away from it. Thanks for the explanation. Any other question to add on? Otherwise,
just a short add-on. I mean, I totally agree with what Ackiel said in the sense that there's lots of hype and thinking that AI and data science would mean that, especially in the media, right? That one day a lot of people's jobs will be replaced by robots, right? Let me give you a bit of a history. In the 70s, when they first come up with the perceptrons or neural networks, they say they're going to replace human. That didn't happen. In the 90s, it happened again. That didn't happen. In 2000, it happened again. Few years, couple ago, when AlphaGo beat the Grandmaster, everyone says everyone's job is going to lose to robot again. That didn't happen. And I don't think it's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years, right? But what I do think is that there are a lot of low-hanging fruits that we can achieve through data science. And it might sound like it's low value because the way you put it, like solve individual problem one by one. But that's exactly what we should do, right? Like it could be one problem, but it's a very important problem to solve. And I don't think we should take anything away from that, right? Like, for example, using deep learning for vision recognition, right? It's solving one problem, but let's not take any value away from that. It's a very, very important task. And if you can do that really well, there's so many values that we can generate from there.
Thank you for the additional info. Thank you. I just like to go quickly to the next question, also from Titi Tan. And also I encourage viewers to just put up your questions here at the comment section so all of us can view. How going forward with data modeling when you find there is difficulty in collecting data, especially unstructured data like image due to PDPA? Very valid question. I think this is again going back to the discussion we had just now. Where do you start? Madelaine, you spoke a bit about compliance, and what are the things you got to look at. Would you have any views on this question?
So thanks for extending the question to me. So what we have seen in the past, as I think I started off at the beginning of this conversation, is my little experience, almost 100%. Okay, I'm probably not a direct word anymore. It's 100% of the places that I've ever been to. Everyone that comes to me and asks, can you build this particular use case and achieve it with my data? All of the time that we have ever gone in, they are always having some missing data. They always basically the missing data led them to not able to achieve that particular use case anymore, and this is very detrimental, obviously, because the role of my team is obviously to be able to achieve and piece the puzzle together, but because due to a lacking of the fundamental data to be able to achieve the right kind of decision making, that has actually prohibited our job and our customer to be able to achieve that particular decision. Now, this is where the story of data exchange actually started coming along. Now, today, I think Muhundhan, you have also rightfully mentioned that today you are probably buying a lot of data. When I use the word buying here, is that there might be commodity-based data, like for example weather. Over on my end now, I was telling the guys, it's a huge thunderstorm out there. Can I actually predict this? Maybe we could because there's a rainy season, right? But it's a huge thunderstorm outside right now, right? So I apologize if you hear a lot of disturbance, but I'm just trying to tell you that So weather-related data is a commodity today, right? So a lot of people realize that to be able to make certain decisions, for example, you want to know, I just give you a very simple example. A lot of my customers come to me and ask a very simple use case. I want to predict what is the next best offer. What's the next best offer? Let's say if I am running a credit card solution today, and I want you to be able to predict what's the next best offer. Tell me what is the next product that my customer would buy. Give me that prediction. So one of the thing is that we then use
Madeleine, we may have lost you a bit there, but we get what you're saying. We probably will then go back to her after this, when she's back again with us. I think the weather is also a bit of a challenge. I think she did speak about data, and I think, interesting. Do we use data to predict weather, or do we call the BOMO? I don't know what Malaysians have their preferences there. So, okay, I thank you for the viewers. I think there's some questions coming, which is good. But I would really want to take a bit of time to talk about something that's really, really crucial. And I think a lot of the viewers would agree with me on this. Talent. When we talk about data analysis or anything out there, when you talk about business growth, there's always a few things that comes to mind. One is the costs. We covered that. Second is we look at what is needed, infrastructure. And the third one, the biggest or one of the top challenges, which is always in the minds of entrepreneurs, business owners, as well as university students, I guess, would be talent, right? So when we are looking at data analytics, in setting up a team, for example, what are the kinds or the types of talent that you will be looking for or that you have acquired at present? Would you be able to share that a little bit?
Yeah, so from our side, simply there would be some basic requirement. So the first would be, we're talking about skill sets. It would be very, very helpful if you have familiarization with servers and database management, and then you are able to perform data visualization and communication. And another important component would be data wrangling. In other words, some would call it data cleansing, where you are able to perform that necessary process before doing the slicing and dicing of the data to make it more meaningful. And another, finally, one very important skill set would be, this normally comes in together with experienced people in handling data. I would call it data intuition. Yeah, where when analytically it's not really able to give you meaningful information, you are able to give some insights based on what you see. Yeah, it's quite difficult to have all of these things in one particular people, but if you have at least a few of these, then I think it's very, very helpful.
Thank you. So probably Dr. Shin a little bit as well. Madeleine, you're back. Thank you. We can see you.
Sorry.
Dr. Shin. No worries, we can understand. I think the weather is not really that great, even in my place here. Dr. Shin, so in a basic layman term, right? If I don't have a data team yet in the organization, how many people do I need, and what would be the basic criteria for me to kick off so that I can mesmerize my clients and my bosses?
Hire a doctor like me. That's how you impress people, right? But jokes aside, I think that's a really valid question, and my short answer to that is be open-minded. And why do I say this? Is because, and I'm sure all of Ackiel and Madelaine would say the same thing. All of us who are hiring would say the same thing. Occasionally on LinkedIn, you see people post up saying that I want to look for a data scientist who have 10 years of experience, SQL, HQL, everything, R, Python, you name it, you got it. You can see that this person basically just dumping everything in the textbook onto that job description list. And if I'm looking for a job, that's the last job that I'll be actually applying for, because the hiring manager basically doesn't know what he or she wants. So why do I say open mind? It's because data science is so new that who are the best person that you want? You want to look for someone who has 10 years of data science experience? I don't think you can find anyone like that. If you do, probably working with Google already, right? And so my point is, why open mind? Because you need to look for people who are good problem solvers. Like what Ackiel said, you have to look at skill sets, not particular skill sets, not degrees, right? So you need to look at people who are flexible, who can learn things fast, who are numerically strong, who loves data, who is good at programming. And why all this, and who's good at giving solutions. These are the typical traits that a good data scientist would have. And the rest is just about learning it from online, from your peers, and learning it as the job goes around. Because even as I speak, data science evolves tremendously. Right? And I can see a lot of, so back in the UK, a lot of my fellow data scientists were previously studying physics just like me, right? And they just realized that physics doesn't pay. And they just decided, so it used to be a lot of physicists move on to become bankers, to be quants, right? That's where all the money is. Now a lot of them move towards become a data scientist. And in Malaysia, I see a lot of engineers doing that, right? A lot of people who are traditional engineers, and they move towards being data scientists. And you can see there's a common theme here, which is people who are good at solving problems, programming, people who are flexible. And so when I say be open-minded when it comes to recruiting talent, is don't go for those very rigid requirements where do you have a degree in data science? You're not going to find that, right? So even if he doesn't know Python or R, that's fine because you can learn this fairly quickly. Right, it's not rocket science, Python and R, but if he has some programming background and he understands the principles of statistics and math and how we should look at data, right? So in the interview, you should ask questions like, for example, like how do you differentiate between precision and recall? Is that the only metrics that you look at when you're validating a model, or things like when should we look at average and when should we look at median? And see how these people react to this kind of questions, this kind of thought-provoking questions, right? People who do a lot of thinking, they realize that in situations like this, we should look at average, and in other situations, we should look at median, right? And so for me, when I hire to my team, that's typically what I look at.
Thank you. I mean, that's a very interesting point. I think I do see that as well in many organizations who have got people with data science or data analytics who are doing that. May not have the right background in the beginning. And I think that's a good insight for many organizations out there. You may already have people that you can train. You just need to figure out whether they have those skills, for example, problem solving and all that, where then you can pick them up and then guide them along the way. So my next question on that is, if somebody does that, if I have someone in my organization whom I think that who's got that kind of capabilities, what sort of trainings are out there that I can expose him or her? Perhaps Madelaine, would you like to tackle that question?
Yeah. Okay. So depends on where you belong. I guess in my industry, we believe a lot in doing the actual. Getting down to dirty, right? Of course, one of the things that we strive along a lot is that we talk to our customers a lot and we get ourselves over time to train what we call the storytelling capability. All right. So because even if you can find based on the statistics of the data, based on the outcome from the data, and you're not able to explain the value of your data, right? This can actually become a problem, of course, in the long run. But these days, there are a lot of courses coming back to the basics of data science, data engineering, things like that. There are a lot of courses that is offered out there in the market. I think I was one of the panelists in I think the training. Some of the training plans being offered by MDEC as well, which I have actually reviewed and also authorized some of those sessions, and I think it has also been launched recently into the market after subsequent to some of our review. So those are in some ways classroom based, theoretical based, but as I mentioned at the beginning, I believe a lot in doing the hands-on. Getting your hands dirty, right? Play around with data, get sample data out there, and learn how to optimize further. And this is something that I believe with solid experience in your belt, nothing else beats that. You can have a lot of theory out there, but you never get to practice it, and you will never be able to move and evolve further in your career. This is what I believe.
Thank you.
Just to add on to this, I think the easiest way, right, for me, just go Kaggle, right? If you go Kaggle, you be a Kaggle champion, everyone wants to hire you, no questions asked. It doesn't matter what kind of background or whatever you do, and just self-learn.
Okay. Fantastic. So I think you mentioned, I think MDEC has got certain programs as well. You can go to MDEC's website and look for it. We've got a program which was recently introduced as well called the Data Driven Enterprise Program. That one helps businesses and professionals embark on data-driven journey. Do check that out. And perhaps if there's no addition, I would love to go to some of the questions because we are almost at the end of our discussion. That was really fast, yeah. I think, wow, time really flew.
Time flies.
Yes. So let's quickly try to help these people with all the ultimate questions they have. I think, okay, Miss Sunita Isaac, a favorite question I know actually come from my organization as well. So she's asking, which one comes first, data governance or infra? How to balance these two factors?
Data governance and what?
Data governance or infra? So I think that's an interesting point. How do you balance these two? Which one comes first?
Because in my opinion, you can have data without having infra because you can always go to cloud hosting. So having the right policies and governance is important before we set up the infra. So in my perspective, it would be governance first and then go for the infra.
Okay, great. I would love to move on to the next question if it's okay. Right, so Nurul Akmal from Intan actually was asking, we're able to use and analyze data to understand people. And in other hand, people may feel being manipulated. So that how can we balance this while we collect the data, especially the metadata? Interesting view. So a bit on the ethics as well. So anyone would love to tackle this question?
For me, it's not manipulating. Actually, even when you talk about organizational behavior, which is quite close to it, it's about understanding us so that we can interact with each other better, or we can serve people better the way that you would like to be served. Yeah, but sometimes, and then the word manipulative is, I would say, between serving and manipulating is a very thin line. Yeah, of course, very often you can manipulate and lead you towards making a certain decision at which you don't want to make. Actually, that can be manipulative. So again, that's why we need some kind of governance and ethics to be planted in how you are able to use the data.
Thank you. I think it makes a lot of sense, right? I think every day we are being manipulated, whether we like it or not. The question is, are we aware of it? Or can we take actions on this? But the ethics side, Doctor, you rightly put it as well, I think it's crucial. Any other addition to the views?
Yeah, well, that just to add on a bit, I think actually data ethics is quite important. And if you look at the papers being published, I think with the rise of a lot of journal papers published about the use cases of AI and machine learning, actually in the last 2 years, the papers that has the most significant growth rate is actually papers on data ethics. And I think that's only right because as we use more and more data, people tend not to think too much about data ethics, but actually the problem is there and we need to think about that. And for me, I see this as a very positive growth where two people from seemingly polar ends, right? Because as a data solutions architect, what I usually do is I try to push the boundary of data ethics, right? Similar to genetic engineering, geneticists, right? They will try to clone people. They will try to push the boundaries of what ethics should be, and then there will be the people who are the specialists in ethics and tell them that what you should do and what you can't do. And I think I can see that there are a lot of situations where we can work hand in hand to improve this. But for me, I think data ethics is very important.
It is fundamental. Thank you. I think we're coming to our last 40-50 seconds, but I would love to take a question from Captain Ko. I think he's been very kind in putting in a number of questions and comments as well. Captain, we owe you one for sure. So I want to take your first question. I think that's really interesting. Today, Alibaba have up to 3,000 data points for each of their participating 160 million SMEs. Whereas in Malaysia, for our SMEs, we have only up to 300 data points. How can we share or collaborate with foreign data provider, given that our data, I think based on what we have? I think what he's saying is a comparison, right? And that's really the magnitude is just amazing. And I think, so how do we as a small country actually benefit, or even as an organization, benefit working with organizations such as Alibaba? Any views on this?
I can give it a jab, give it a try on this one. So I don't know if Alibaba does have 3,000 data points or not, but I can share that the situation in generally in China and in the rest of the world, and probably in other countries compared to Malaysia, it's slightly different. In China, a lot of the data, like WeChat, all this, the data is very centralized, right? They collect a lot of facial features data as well, where in a lot of countries that would be seen as unethical. They do it anyway. So there's this advantage, right? Where that's why you can see China is growing so fast into the data science, because they have that advantage. But when you talk about like Malaysia do not have that many data points. So I think number one, what we can do is that we need to start realizing that data is going to move, the trend in the next 20 years is going to move from just purely information to be a commodity that will drive growth. So you become just purely information to become a commodity that will be trading and that can also be driving growth. So when people realize that, people will start to think about what kind of other data that we can also collect, right? But more importantly, I mentioned this very early in this talk, is that I personally feel, again, I'm more than happy to be corrected, I personally feel that for Malaysia's case, the bottleneck is still with finding the value in those data. You see 300 data points, yeah, it's not as many as 3,000 data points of Alibaba has, but 300 data points is more than enough for me to generate lots of insights and values. And not forgetting that from 300 data points, we can generate additional features through a lot of machine learning methods, right? By multiplexing these variables and a lot of other techniques that we can use. And so from 300 data points, we can actually derive close to thousands or even tens of thousands of additional data points, depending on what your data points are. Without looking at the data, I can't comment, obviously. But what I'm saying is that don't be disheartened, the fact that we are so far behind China, but China is such a big country, and I think China is growing so fast that I think it's a bit unfair to compare Malaysia to China, basically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shin. So we have come to the end of our session, and I would like to thank every one of you. I think you've given fantastic views, and we have covered so much within just short of an hour. And I think this is really awesome, looking at all the experiences we have. And we hope that viewers, thank you so much for being with us as well. And I hope that you have benefited from this. Before we go, I think this is a tradition that's going to be built in the future, where we will take selfie using the platform that we have here. So please switch on your cameras. I'm going to switch on the groupie selfie that is going to be activated in probably in 2 seconds. So are you all ready? Okay, so 3, 2, 1. I'm going to press the button and see what happens. Please take your photo. Okay, so one more try, just to make sure that we get everything. So I'm going to just do it one more time. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think with that, we will wrap up the session today. Once again, thank you very much, esteemed speakers, for sharing your views. And also thank you so much to the audiences who've been here with us for the last 1 hour. Thank you. And with that, we would like to bid you goodbye. Have a great day and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mohamed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time.
Okay, bye.